Okay, we have arrived at lesson 15. Svadhistana Chakra. Svadhistana Chakra is the second chakra from the bottom. Muladhara Chakra, we discussed last week, is at the root of our physical existence, but significant in the fact that in the center of Muladhara Chakra lies Surya Bindu, the gate through which the vital energy rises up that is so important for our spiritual awakening. Svadhistana Chakra is the seat of the self. Sva means self. Now, interestingly, a human being has a potential to go through two of those realizations of the self. The first, everybody goes through. The previous chakra had a developmental stage between birth and the age of approximately 7. This chakra has a developmental stage of another 7 years, approximately 8 to 14. It is the age in which children become self-conscious. They start spending time in front of the mirror, studying their ears, their nose, their hair. They become self-conscious, self-critical, a little bit vain. Not only that, they discover the attraction towards the other sex, or the same sex, if that is in their nature. They start becoming aware of a possible, or the possibility of human relations, with them in the center of that. That is an instinctive development. Everybody goes through that development, based on the developmental stage of this chakra between the age of 8 and 14. That is important, but for us as yoga practitioners, more of interest is of course the second realization. Because that is a realization that only people go through that are, one way or another, naturally or by practice, go through a spiritual path. That second awakening or realization can happen anytime, depending on your energy household. Particularly when sattva occurs in Svadhisthana Chakra, we start becoming conscious of the self with a capital S. We start connecting with the heart, or soul consciousness is developed. Connection with the heart, soul consciousness is one and the same thing. So the first awareness, realization as a child is very primitive in a sense, because we are still open to conditioning. Conditioning based on identification with upbringing, with education, with culture, and of course with everything that we are bombarded with through the media. The second, however, on the contrary, the second realization rises above all that conditioning and allows you to connect with your true characteristics, beyond or underlying the conditioning. And with that, you will also gradually shake off, get rid of all those superficial conditionings. So an important chakra, but interestingly, like we discussed with the subject of self-study, the fourth niyama, The self with the capital S is not something that you have to sit down for and say, now I want to connect with my heart. I want to function based on soul consciousness. All you have to do is practice yoga correctly, leading to sattva in all the chakras. And of course, the sattva in Svadhistana chakra will then very naturally lead you to start investigating yourself. You will start first digging into your past. You will start very consciously undergoing everything that you feel, think, and how that is related to past experiences. And you will more and more develop insight into your specific characteristics, and very likely discover characteristics you never knew you possessed. It's an incredibly wonderful journey to be on. And it will lead, of course, to new directions in life, leaving behind elements of your life that have served their purpose, but you are now kind of reborn. And what was interesting before loses its significance, and your attention is drawn to what you feel really attracted to, based on your heart's content. The subtle element of the chakra is water. It's the water center. The subtle vehicle of action, the karmendriya, is reproduction. A couple of weeks ago, we had an extra file in the lesson material about becoming pregnant through prayer. It is very common these days that people have difficulty getting pregnant. And the answer lies in the water center, Svadhistana Chakra. At the beginning, when I started teaching as a freelancer, we had on some occasions prenatal classes. Then because the word was out there that we did prenatal classes, I was also contacted by people who were not pregnant yet, but were interested in becoming pregnant and had difficulty with that. And my answer to them was, just come to class. The regular classes, not the prenatal class. Because yoga leads to sattva, and when there is sattva, the chances of becoming pregnant is higher. And lo and behold, the women, as far as I know, those that joined particularly out of an interest to become pregnant, having difficulty becoming pregnant, struggling with it for an extended period of time, within 6 to 8 months, they would not come back to class anymore and write me a message saying, I became pregnant and the doctor advises me to be very careful. It's better not to practice yoga. So it works, sattva. One element that is important to keep in mind when it comes to becoming pregnant, this is the center of reproduction. That is that if we want to become pregnant, we build a field of tension that causes us not to become pregnant. I say us, I'm a man, I will never be pregnant, of course, but this is how it works. We know non-desire. Non-desire causes a field of tension that often leads to failure or conflict. So my advice when women come to my class with the distinct expressing the wish distinctly to become pregnant, before we even do any yoga, I advise them, when you are intimate with your partner, Do not think about wanting to become pregnant. Do not be intimate for the sake of becoming pregnant. Just enjoy being with each other. And if you can because if you want to become pregnant, you have that field of tension. But if you just enjoy being together, being intimate with each other, energy is circulating in an accelerated form, increasing the chances of becoming pregnant. Subtle organ of perception is taste. Mouth watering, salivating, taste. The subtle energy is samana prana. Muladhara chakra was apana prana. Here you have samana prana, the typical vital energy responsible for its functions, which is here, reproduction and taste. The color associated with this chakra is orange, and there is also a mantra that is Vam. Svadhistana chakra is responsible for lower desires, such as jealousy, greed, and desire, but also it is concerned with saving, with conserving, with social mindedness. Playing and creativity also. Now this is very interesting. It's not in the handout, but whenever we do the fire poses, which were introduced only recently, you hear me say repeatedly, play with the pose. Stay playful. Because they are hard, we have a tendency to grind our teeth and no pain, no gain, I'm going to do this. We have to let go of that, because that's ambition for Manipura chakra. We haven't discussed yet, we will in the second session. But this is very interesting, and there is a pranayama that directly focuses on this principle. You douse the fire with water. By staying playful, you cool the ambition in Manipura chakra. Manipura chakra is fire. Ambition and ego are located there. When ego and ambition are not controlled, they lead to violence, to conflicts. We reach our goals by going through windows and walls, so to speak. Ambition, ego create a field of tension that is not nice. We all know people who are overcome with ambition. And they will get where they want to be at the price of anything, at the cost of anything. That may seem a technique with which to achieve goals, and it does work. Many rich people have functioned like that to get where they want to be, but they leave so much destruction in their wake, so much conflict, and people lose trust in people who function like this, so ruthlessly pursuing their ambitions. The proposition from yoga is, ambition is not bad, but please work in line with the yamas and the niyamas. Otherwise you set yourself up for a lot of conflict, misery, and suffering, and failure often as well. When we do these demanding fire poses, the leg raise, the two boat poses, and playfully, those who want to experiment, Mayurasana, the peacock, I keep telling you, play, smile, control your attitude. You implement that in the exercise and it will very naturally integrate into how you deal with ambition and ego in daily life. by staying calm and controlled. And in that way, it may take a little more time, but you will reach your goal in a decided way, in a decisive way, determined way, but without leaving all the destruction in your wake. So much more harmony, much less conflict and suffering as a result of that conflict. Towards the end of this course, you will learn a pranayama where you deliberately activate, by the power of thought, this chakra, Svadhistana chakra, to let energy rise up and envelop Manipura chakra. It's much easier than you think, and it really works. A good way to harmonize the chakra is, of course, hatha yoga, physical exercises, and particularly those where the hips are being bent. I haven't mentioned yet, but because we haven't studied the chakras yet, but we have done a lot of standing poses, and there are three major elements in these poses. Bending at the hips, spreading the feet in certain poses, and bending the legs. When you spread the feet, like in the triangle pose, like in Prasarita Padottanasana and Parsvottanasana, and all the warrior poses and what have you, all the poses where we spread the feet, you stimulate Muladhara chakra. Simply spreading the legs stimulates Muladhara chakra. Bending at the hips, or adding bending of the hips, which in most poses is in fact the case. After you spread the feet, you do something where the hips become bent, are pivoting. You then stimulate Svadhisthana chakra. And if the exercise then also has an element of bending one or both of the legs, like in Utthita Parsvakonasana, where you bend one leg, like in both warrior poses where you also bend one leg, you then stimulate the fire center. So write this down. It's not in your book or in your handouts. Spreading the feet stimulates Muladhara chakra at the bottom. Svadhisthana chakra is stimulated by bending at the hips, and Manipura chakra, the third chakra from the bottom, is stimulated by adding an element of bending one or two of the legs. The heart chakra is another matter. The heart chakra is stimulated by exercises where you activate the arms. So we will come to that. We haven't had much of Mayurasana, of course, but it's not officially on the schedule. But there are various poses where the arms are intensely engaged, and that really stimulates the heart chakra. Sattva characteristics of Svadhisthana chakra. People who have this chakra well balanced characteristically show graceful and smooth movement and emotional maturity, flexibility, and ability to accommodate changes. Raja's characteristics: easily addicted, very emotional, emotionally dependent, and attached. The characteristics of the artist. We talked about real artists being recognizable by certain characteristics. Here you have them. Artists are artists because they have above average levels of energy that allows them to create, that awakens creative powers in them. But energy is inherently unstable. So the more energy you have, the more unstable you tend to be. Then artists are artists, they are not yoga practitioners. They do not exercise in order to keep their energy under control. So it's often wreaking havoc. It leads to drug abuse, alcohol abuse, tragic relationships with very high ups and very low downs, lots of passion, lots of sadness, and very often leading to premature death, early death. So those people possess an incredible asset, energy. But somebody should guide them and teach them how to canalize that energy. Yoga is the particular way to do that. Tamas characteristics: rigidity in body and attitude, difficulty with social skills, fear of change, and lack of passion. It's characteristics that you see in many people. People are not following their heart, they do dutifully what they are taught to do. Since they were born, they were told, they were educated, the government has expectations, and subconsciously that is how you are trained to function. And often not allowed even to follow your heart. Since childhood onwards, teachers and parents and the government want you to focus on your duties, your responsibilities, and not become distracted by passions. It's a little bit a black and white statement. There is, of course, a middle way. There are parents and teachers who do stimulate creativity and passion because they understand the importance of it. But generally, if you look around, you see many gray mice in society, many zombies, many people who potentially have a spirit, but that spirit is not fueled. That energy is all down. So Rajas characteristics are rare, Tamas characteristics in all chakras, because that is just the natural human tendency to be relatively tamas. Tamas is generally dominating in people's energy household. So it leads to fear of change also, anxiety. It's the reason why people stay in their comfort zone, in their safety bubble. It's why people do not have the courage to choose the path or the road not taken. Out of anxiety, fear of change, we stay put. Which is safe, which is comfortable, but it does kill the spirit. It does kill our most precious asset, which is energy. Vital energy at that. And that leads us to the conclusion at the bottom. Very important that you try to soak this up and contemplate this. Oppressing emotions leads to imbalance in this chakra. Unfortunately, people who express themselves are considered to be losing control. When you are relatively passionate, people who are relatively passionate, emotional, I'm a Pisces. Pisces are passionate and emotional. People will tell you that you are emotionally unstable. People will tell you that you must shape up and stay in control. But it is exactly that kills your most precious asset. We live in a society, almost all cultures have an element where you are being indoctrinated, where you're being taught to control or even oppress your emotions. You're being taught that when you are emotional, passionate, that you are weak, that you are out of control. However, passion, for example, is an enormous source of vitality and creativity. Without passion, life becomes grey and dull, and we lose touch with our real selves as a result of that. There is a quote from Carl Jung. Emotion is the chief source of all becoming conscious. He makes the link here with consciousness, with the crown chakra. Emotion is the chief source of all becoming conscious. There can be no transforming of darkness into light and apathy into movement without emotion. But we have a problem here. There is a reason why people consider emotion, passion, as a weakness, as instability. It is, in fact. But instead of oppressing it and then, as a result, killing that wonderful source of precious energy, we need to find ways to canalize that energy, to control that energy, instead of killing it. And artists do that, of course, through creating art, expressing themselves in music, song, or visual art, like paintings or writing. The big problem that we face as sensitive people is that we get hurt, because to allow ourselves emotion and passion, we open ourselves up to the outside world, to other people. We make ourselves very vulnerable. We expose our weakest spots in that way. And generally, people who get hurt once or twice, they tend to shut down. And when you shut down, it's like a beautiful songbird from a tropical rainforest, beautiful colored feathers, capable of beautiful song singing, that is being put into a cage and loses all its colors and ability to sing, and just withers away in that cage. I was like that in my teenage years. I ended up in a very dark hole because I started oppressing my emotions, because it made me vulnerable, because I got terribly hurt. And starting to come out of that dark hole, I decided to never ever... You know the story that I told you, that I came to the conclusion that to be happy again, I just have to be myself again, including the emotions and the passion and everything that comes with it. And through yoga, I have learned that the hurt that you are exposed to, the vulnerability, is in fact not necessarily a negative thing. Because every time we do expose ourselves and bump our nose into a wall, we learn enormously from the suffering. It teaches us everything we need to know to grow, to mature, to be better human beings, to be better parents, to be better teachers. But of course, we also become more selective. Here in the class, I'm an open book, I'm an open vessel. I make myself very vulnerable. But when I go to E-Mart, of course I don't. I'm friendly to people, much more than other people generally. People are surprised by that. But I'm not opening up my heart in a way that I do here in the class. So you become selective, where you will allow yourself to be vulnerable and where you expect possible exposure to aggression or people not understanding what you do and why you do like that. And you learn this through the experiences that you have in the past. So my plea here is, do not, when hurt, do not withdraw yourself into a dark shell. Do not clam up. Simply learn from the experience. Become wiser and grow. Carl Jung saw it very correctly. Consciousness is the result of all that wonderful energy that is accompanying emotion. Oppress emotions and that energy is not there. There is no possibility of awakening consciousness, spirituality, without emotion. So all we have to learn to do is to canalize it and become selective. Same with relationships. Relationships sometimes go wrong. We get terribly hurt, humiliated, disappointed. And there are people who then say, it's enough for me. I will not even try anymore. I might just as well live alone. That is a safe way of protecting yourself from hurt. But relationships are always very instructive, very spiritual also. But they do come with hurt sometimes. If you have experienced not one but more than one relationships, and you look back, you must be able to see a significant change each time when a relationship tragically comes to an end. It hurts, it takes time to recover, sometimes a long time, but in the end you see that you have evolved considerably. And you know what that means? The next time around that there is a possibility to have a relationship, you are better prepared. That relationship will be purer and closer to your heart. And you will one day find somebody that you connect with. Until then, be careful, but do not walk away from a possible precious relationship because it might end up in a disaster. I hope from now on, and not only in this respect, that you can change your mind about the pain that we go through in life, because since we were born, we live with this idea that pain is bad, that suffering is bad, that failure is bad. But we have to come to the conclusion here that if we simply reflect on the cause of pain and suffering, we learn very crucial lessons about ourselves and about life in general that help us advance, that help us mature, grow, and become wiser. And when you see that, the suffering that you feel turns into gratitude. You become grateful for the wise lessons that you were allowed to learn. And that is just such a huge turnaround from misery to gratitude. It's a whole different perception, a whole different outlook. Emotion is the chief source of all becoming conscious. There can be no transforming of darkness into light, which is ignorance turning into wisdom, and apathy into movement without emotion. From now on, emotion is a good thing. Just be careful. Questions about Svadhistana Chakra? Okay, let's have a short break.